Hi guys, welcome back to the Daily Brief. This is the fourth and final day and also the final day of the year, 31st December. For the past 3 days, we've been taking a break from writing regular stories and introducing you to the writers from our team. Today, for the last day, we have saved the best for you, which is Pranav. Pranav is one of the best writers, period, in the whole floor of Zerodha. And it's not just me speaking, it's even our boss, Bhuvan, who verifies this claim. And that is the point that I want to start with introducing you, right? You being, I guess, the sole writer in this team of geeks and nerds and fairly stupid young guys. When you receive, the first drafts that Krishna and I write on topics that have been given to us, what's the first thing that catches your attention in that first draft? What do you look to solve for? Is it the clarity of thought? Is it something that we're missing? What's the thing that you tackle first as a writer?
Also, just before Pranav answers, I think the piece that you read or you watch, I think a bunch of you have commented that it feels very well thought out and all of those things. That's all because of Pranav. It's not because of Kashish or me. We think and write in a very loose manner. It is Pranav who puts it together in a very well structured manner that is very digestible. So yeah.
Uh, so I think the flip side to being the writer of the team is also I am the least competent with the actual work of finance, economics, business, etc. So, so like when I joined Zerodha, the first thing I wrote for Zerodha was Zerodha messed up by hiring me because I am a humanities student at heart. I cannot even imagine earning money. None of this, like this world does not stick to my brain. Right? So all I can do is bring words. And that's what I've been doing with the daily brief. Now, to get to your question, right? I think on most days, I just have this very basic rubric in my head that I want to write in a way that a nerdy high school kid will be able to understand, or at least if they're willing to put in a little bit of effort, there is nothing that's going to stop them from understanding what we're trying to say, right? So I'm just going line by line, seeing one, is there anything that stops people from understanding what we're trying to say? And maybe a little bit of like, can we say this in a slightly shorter fashion, right? And on most days, that is it. Every once in a while, though, like I go maybe a step beyond where I suddenly realize that, if I add like maybe two tiny little ideas or like one really nice sentence at this point, suddenly this idea will come alive, right? And sometimes it can be really odd. Like for instance, you wrote that cement piece, right? I think this was JK's JSW cement.
This is replacement. The
IPO note.
Yeah, yeah. And I was reading that, and there was this one moment where I was like, actually, cement is very fascinating, which is not a line that most people in the world have thought of. But this image just came into my head, right? Like, that if I want to make my house, I want to use the thing that is the most abundant on earth, which is the ground. I want to dig the ground and make entire houses with it. That is, of course, impossible. But there is this magical substance, which is the greatest glue on earth, which can just stick all that mud and rock together, and you could actually make monuments out of mud. Right? Can I just tell this to people? It is magic. It is happening in your house, and it is amazing. Can I tell it to people? Right? So there are moments like that where, yeah, I throw in a little bit of writerly flourish.
He's the only writer in the team who uses the word alas.
And that gets reflected, in the final piece that eventually comes out to you guys, which is extremely polished, not at all reflective of the first draft that we guys puke out. Actually, and using that as a reference point, whenever we try to explain a concept, right, let's say GDP. I studied GDP in 11th grade, where the definition that was given to me was it's a sum of all products and services in the economy. But that's not how Pranav will explain it to you. In writing, there's a thing called show, don't tell. Most of the things that we do is just telling, giving the definitions out. He actually shows it to you. He adds that visual element to it. What I want to ask you, and something that I'm jealous of, is how do you do it? I know the why do you do it, because it just makes the piece come to life. And I'm sold on that. But how do you do it?
So I'll tell you what, right? Like in my head, I mean, I come to this as with the aesthetic of a humanities student. I do not have the instincts of a finance guy or like an econ guy or a business guy or none of that. I come to this from like someone would to, I don't know, literature, right? So there are situations that are very, very like intricate and financial. Like, for instance, whatever that India, the rupee is sliding, and therefore a bunch of hot money has taken short positions on the rupee, and then the RBI is going in with forward swaps. And that is a very dry little scenario. But what comes into my head is almost like, in the Lord of the Rings, it is Helm's Deep. The orcs are outside and they're sieging the castle. They are, waiting to feast on man flesh. And then on the horizon, Gandalf comes with the Rohirrim and rides down. That is RBI taking forward swaps in my head, right? So I think there is an echo of everything everywhere. The same plot lines that work out in like books or stories or movies or whatever are the same plot lines that you see in something like whatever in the industry for cement. And the like if you can just see those parallels, then you can write those parallels. It's really
So you think both of us would be better writers if we started reading fiction?
yes. I mean, at 100%.
Let's say if you are doing a story, I think one of the hardest pieces that you worked on was interest rate derivatives.
Jesus, yes.
Which is, I don't know why you picked it, but like walk me through, if you were doing that story, the headline, whatever the trigger is, how do you use AI for that?
I think it's extremely, extremely contextual, and your workflow with AI, at least if you're using it in a smart fashion, will change for the story that you're doing, right?
Right. Fair.
So, for instance, let's take two examples. There is one place where a large part of our workflow is automated, which is, say, IPO documents. We have a vague sense of like, in any IPO document, there are these 4 chapters where there are things that are sensible. Everyone's trying to sell things to you through that IPO document, but they have sentences. And if you can string together, if you can just join the dots across the sentences, you will learn something about the company that maybe even management struggles to understand, right? Like just you can synthesize large amounts of information. A lot of that is just running 4 pro searches, downloading all of that, dumping it in a new document and just asking it again and again to try and join the dots across whatever you've read. I think there, a lot of our processes are mechanical, even if the insights are not.
Right.
In something like interest rate derivatives, on the other hand, I was heading in completely blind. Right? I started off with a BIS paper, and then I committed to taking that paper, and then I read the first sentence, and I realized that I did not understand the first sentence. So I sat with ChatGPT for half an hour and just went like, okay, how does the sentence work? Then I read the second sentence and went like, okay, I do not understand this either. And then for the next, I don't know how many hours, I just went sentence by sentence at the verge of tears, almost just going like, please help all of this fit inside my head because it is not. I think you're in those situations, you're asking questions of all kinds. You're asking like the tiniest questions of, okay, at what cadence does a bank charge a loan? And you're asking these grand questions about like, how does the world change if the LIBOR is no longer the benchmark for most loans? I think you just keep hammering at it, keep asking as many dumb, silly questions as you can until it fits somehow in your head. And then you try and put it out, and if it works, it works.
I think one thing that I'm really fascinated about you is the fact that you truly live up to the phrase going down a rabbit hole, because you really go down that one. I think both of us use it very flimsily, but you really go down very weird rabbit
The
holes.
real nerd is
Pranav. So what's that one rabbit hole you went in 2026 that you still can't find your way out of?
So honestly, I mean, before we started talking, was reading through our back catalogs, and I do not remember what I did in the first week of December. So, I mean, I think like there are infinite rabbit holes that we've gone into, but I think maybe like what I am taking away from all of this is like a lot of these meta stories, right? I think we're specifically right now we're living in an era of inflection points, right? Now, like if you take say computing, then AI has come, but this is the beginning of AI from what I can tell, right? This is going to change everything, and we don't even know how, and like our lives will change. But this is just one aspect of it. If you look at geopolitics, then the US is going through some internal troubles. China is taking charge of the entire world. A lot of like geopolitical alignments are changing. The world that we knew since basically the Second World War is no longer going to be the case, say, on 2030. If you look at biology, then we're finding like new ways to treat things like cancer, where we're literally pre-programming living things to sort of attack cancer cells. Or let's say energy, the stuff that you have gone into so much about how like we are on the cusp of unlimited energy forever, right? And so on and so forth. No matter where you look, you're living in inflection points, in a world filled with inflection points. And all of them are going to crack within, let's say, the next 5 odd years. And every story you do for the daily brief, I think you're trying to just put one more stitch into this mental tapestry you have of like, what is my life like in 2040? As young people that are alive in this era, I don't know if there's ever been a point where the future has been more cloudy, right? And I think every little story that we're doing for the daily brief, it confuses you more, but it gets you like one tiny inch closer to the answer of like, what is my life going to look like just a few years
But
from
also leaves you with the feeling that I still don't know.
now? Yeah, absolutely. At least you're interested instead of fearful. I think that's as good as it gets.
So, taking one step at a time, learning about those new things, even though how cloudy does it get, was there a point throughout 2025 that you clearly remember where you were heading into a topic or a story that you were really confident about and were very confident कि हाँ ये मेरे को पता है, but as you took one step closer, you realize you're heading further and further into darkness and you end up getting even more lost. Is there any one story, rabbit hole, or just aspect of your research that really took you to a point where you're like, fuck it, I don't know?
No, but I'll tell you what, like, I think there are stories that you start off going like, I do not know this. And at most, it's like, maybe I will know this tomorrow instead of knowing this by this evening, right? And that's the range of variations. There are stories where you think you have like a mental map of like what all you have to research for the story to pan out. And then as you start reading, you realize that your mental map is entirely wrong, right? Just the there is a tiny concept over here that will take you 4 hours to understand, and everything you've understood, like everything you thought you know, is just entirely inadequate. I think what most immediately comes to mind, so for instance, let's say like Cloudflare, right? So you, as someone who wasn't like, didn't really understand technology a lot, right? I thought it was just some random tech provider that was fairly famous, and there was a dependency that was created, and the internet sparked out for a little bit. And I thought if I could just talk about what it does, how it does it, and that the fact that there's a dependency, you could just have a story in your hands. And as you keep reading, you're like, oh, the internet has changed in its entirety in the last 10 years. And as a non-engineer, non-tech person, I am trying to just decode what the internet once was and what the internet is today. And that was a process that took hours after hours, just trying to gain some kind of mental picture of, what the online world looks like. And it's something that you spend all your day on, but you have no clue what's happening just behind your screen, right? I think it happens all the time, honestly. Like, you get into a story with no understanding of what you're going into, and it's a coin toss of whether, it's going to finish or not in the time you've been allocated.
A final question. I think all of us have answered this whenever we recorded. What's the one thing that you would like to change about Daily Brief, or what's the one direction that you would like to take ourselves in?
I think, like, over the last year and a half, right? Given that none of us were media guys, or none of us like actually knew what we were doing, we were just a bunch of people who thought they could explain the news better than the news, and we decided to try. We have been throwing a lot of stuff at the wall just to see what sticks. I think what we need to do going ahead is to understand what works with us, understand what principles actually help the daily brief be what it is, crystallize them and double down on them. I think, for instance, that one thing that has always worked for us is that we're trying to be as clear as we can. So we need to double down on that and make that a priority. Or if, like, let's say one of the things that makes us successful is the fact that we are approximately the length of your morning car ride to office. We need to make sure that we don't get lost in our own navel gazing and forget the fact that that is the place where people listen to us, and so on and so forth. I think we have done a lot of experiments, a lot of them have worked, we have received a lot of love, but maybe in the coming year, we need to understand what it means to do this professionally instead of just experimenting till the dogs come home.
And that's it, guys, from our end. This has been a lovely year, 2025. We couldn't have asked for more from you guys. We are always, always, always overwhelmed with the comments that you give us, the retweets that we get everywhere, be it YouTube, Substack, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we couldn't be more thankful about it. 2025 has been great. We hope much brighter things for 2026, both for ourselves as writers and for our audience, making you smarter one story at a time. That's been our agenda.
2 stories at a time.
2 stories at a time. So yeah, wishing you all a very happy new year. We'll see you next year.